When we think about medieval India, everybody knows about the King Akbar and his court historian Abul Fazl. In his works, Abul Fazl has mentioned when they came and saw Odisha, what was his thought about Odisha. He says that it is not proper that this country should be sought as an object of human ambition. It belongs exclusively to the gods. It is a place of continual pilgrimage. Now, a unique thing when you move around Odisha and go and see the temples, living temples, as well as temple ruins all over the state, be it in the coastal plains, be it in the highlands, the hilly areas, the plateaus, north, south, east, west, any part of Odisha you go, even now, and the ancient Kalinga region. I mean, Odisha is just a major part of the ancient Kalinga region that used to be. Kalinga being in the present day, some parts of Andhra Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, and West Bengal, Jharkhand also were parts of the great Kalinga region. If you see all those Kalingan temple architectures from all these regions, a very unique thing and very common thing you would see in most of these temple walls, that it might be a temple for a certain main deity, like it might be a Shiva temple or a temple dedicated to Vishnu or a temple dedicated to Shakti. But on its walls, you would see sculptures of different other gods and goddesses. When we talk about Odisha's heritage, of course, we have to think about Bharatvarsha's or our India's civilizational cultural heritage, because as we all know, the cultural civilizational heritage of India in itself is it's a vast and continuously growing thing, and quite rich on its own, and we can compare it with a deeply rooted sacred tree of life. When I say that, let's say like the great banyan tree or the peepal tree, whose roots, branches, and aerial roots of the sacred tree, we can think of all these as our various Indic faiths that grew and flourished in India.
Namaste, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you to another episode of Indic Talks. I am Ujasvi Mishra, and today we will be discussing Odisha, a divine journey through the ages, fostering faiths and beliefs, nurturing religions and spiritualism. To elucidate this, we have our speaker today, Preeta Rout ji, who has been a speaker with us for some time now, and she has had many previous talks with us. She is a heritage and culture enthusiast, satyānwesi, a curator of lesser-known facts about Bharatvarsh's socio-cultural legacies and heritage, with a niche focus on Odisha, researching, unraveling, analyzing, and curating rare facts and connections. I welcome you, ma'am, and I request you to take over from here.
Namaskar everyone. Thank you so much, Ojasvi. And I'm Preeta. Today I'll be presenting another topic related to Odisha. And the topic name is Divinity and Spiritualism and Odisha Perspective. Let's start. First of all, before I begin this presentation and talk, I want to just tell a few things that this particular topic I have chosen is actually quite vast and on its own, and we'll be covering a lot of things in it, but everything I'll try to cover very briefly, since each subtopic would also be can be a talk which can go on for more than an hour. So today my aim is to present very briefly, very succinctly about all the different faiths, all the different religions, all the different traditions which have called Odisha their home over the different centuries, and how today's Odisha has been shaped by all these vibrant cultures and religions, traditions and faiths throughout the different millennia and centuries till now. So let's proceed, and I would like to start with a couple of quotes from historians and historians and other scholars throughout the centuries. When we when we think about medieval India, everybody knows about the King Akbar and his court historian Abul Fazl. In his works, Abul Fazl has mentioned when they came and saw Odisha, what was his thought about Odisha. He says that it is not proper that this country should be sought as an object of human ambition. It belongs exclusively to the gods. It is a place of continual pilgrimage. So awestruck were they when they came to this land and saw the living temples, the ruins of ancient temples going back to time immemorial, and so many different types of things depicted in these temple ruins and the sculpture, so many faiths fostering there, that made him say that this land belongs exclusively to the gods and it is a place of continual pilgrimage. Such ideas have continued inspiring many other scholars throughout the centuries. When in the early 20th century, an Indian scholar, a person called Sri Manomohan Ganguly, wrote his book during British Indian times. He writes about Odisha as the country of the blessed, adorned with all the virtues, and as the bestower of heaven and salvation. Its sanctity preserved it from an attack by the Mughals till as late as the 16th century. You know, when whole of Bharatvarsh, India, had already succumbed to the Turko-Afghans and later the Mughals, Odisha was one of the last standing Hindu kingdoms which had not succumbed to any other foreign rule till very recent times in Indian history, which is around 16th century. And Manomohan Ganguly says that its sanctity has been preserved because the way this country was blessed, adorned with all the virtues from the ancient times. So here I put a collection of different shrines and temples and monuments from all those ancient periods throughout Odisha's history, which celebrate all these different faiths and traditions. Now, a unique thing when you move around Odisha and go and see the temples, living temples, as well as temple ruins all over the state, be it in the coastal plains, be it in the highlands, the hilly areas, the plateaus, north, south, east, west, any part of Odisha you go, even now, and the ancient Kalinga region. I mean, Odisha is just a major part of the ancient Kalinga region that used to be. Kalinga being in the present day, some parts of Andhra Pradesh, Chhattisgarh and West Bengal, Jharkhand also were parts of the great Kalinga region. If you see all those Kalingan temple architectures from all these regions, a very unique thing and very common thing you would see in most of these temple walls, that it might be a temple for a certain main deity, like it might be a Shiva temple or a temple dedicated to Vishnu or a temple dedicated to Shakti. But on its walls, you would see sculptures of different other gods and goddesses. Like a Shiva temple may have Shakta reliefs or even other like reliefs from Vaishnava faith, and even Buddhist and Jaina reliefs might be seen in some of those temples. So that shows the syncretism that happened throughout the centuries. Because you see, Odisha had been ruled throughout the periods by different ruling dynasties, I mean. And in such dynasties, it was the kings, queens, or the royals, the ministers, never it was that everybody would be of the same faith. Like a dynasty might have had, like Buddha kings, they would have maybe like a Shaiva or Buddha king might have a Jaina wife, or a Jaina king might have a Hindu, like a Shaiva or Vaishnava wife or queen, or in their ministerial things they would have different faiths. So because all these were Indic faiths, so there was an intermixture of people who followed different faiths even in the same ruling dynasties. We will touch upon it around the end of this presentation anyway, so I'll just keep it at that. And let's just quickly see what all different faiths has Odisha seen over the periods of time. So starting from the very ancient times, where it is a common thing about any part of the world. Indigenous cultures everywhere in the world, the tribal groups, they had their own belief systems in nature worship, in totems, in shamans, in all these type of animism, totemism, shamanism type of things, which constitute the indigenous religions or faiths, or the tribal faiths. Then going to ancient faiths like the Jaina and the Bauddha faiths, even our Vedic traditions. Then came the Puranic traditions of like then Shaiva, Shakta, Vaishnava, and many of these had the tantric sides to it. Then came also, there is the Shunyavada and the very much later the Mahima cult in Odisha, and so many subsects inside all of this. So all such different faiths, all such different religion, they're not religions per se, but traditions, faiths, and ways of life, and all Indic forms, they found a home in Odisha, a nurturing ground, a cradle, which let them flourish and survive and syncretize with each other and have a very cohesive form of existing. Throughout the times, there were, so it was many faiths and beliefs, yet a unique and distinctive harmony. And as you all know, cultures are porous, they are open to intermixture with others and other different cultures, traditions. So throughout the times, each of these borrowed some certain things from the other, or modified certain things of the other, or made certain things their own. So it was a very beautiful mishmash and syncretism that you could see in Odisha. And Odisha has always had this accepting sort of philosophy, the dogma. It was never a religious tolerance, you could say. You could say that it was more of a acceptance of all faiths into its cradle. So that gave all these different types of thoughts and presences a very important part in Odisha's lifestyle, or Kalinga's evolving lifestyle. And how do we understand these various, this vibrant diversity and the unique syncretism? What are the various ways in today's time how we understand it? Or since the time when people have started understanding about their past, in the modern times, I mean. So what do we rely on? We rely on different archaeological findings, epigraphical findings, sculptural presences, sculptural things on the temple walls in situ, or it might be in the museums, and textual references in palm leaf manuscripts or printed into books later on. But last but not the least, the most important among all this is an intangible way of understanding. It's from the folk memories. Folk memories are the most vital part of any civilization, because such things, some of them forgotten, some of them less remembered, but they create a type of continuous, without breaking, continuous like propagation throughout the generations in a civilization. So same thing has happened in Odisha. Many things have gone on, like traditions, festivals, rituals have gone continuously without breaking through, because of this folk traditions and memories. And here I would like to also quote upon Gurudev Ravindranath Tagore. When he saw Konarka, he had the Sun Temple at Konarka. He says here, the language of stone surpasses the language of man. Now, why I have used this particular quote here in this slide is, this in itself, like always, I feel our Odisha's temples are the best way to understand how Odisha had been in the past, in long back, when we didn't have we don't find a lot of other textual or other epigraphical records. Still, we would find a lot of things about Odisha's contemporary society etched into stone and made immortal in that. So you would see a replica of the way Odisha people, Kalinga's people, where its society was what all drove them, what was their central philosophies, dogmas, faiths. You would see all that reflected in on the temple walls of Kalingan temples. So that language of stone itself is a lot. So it's all out there for scholars and seers to understand how Kalinga has been in all these different centuries. And so that's why I have used this quote here. Here, the language of stone surpasses the language of man. And the beauty of that sculpture in that way, Rabindranath Tagore had mentioned about it. When we talk about Odisha's heritage, of course, we have to think about Bharatvarsha's or our India's civilizational cultural heritage, because as we all know, the cultural civilizational heritage of India in itself is it's a vast and continuously growing thing, and quite rich on its own, and we can compare it with a deeply rooted sacred tree of life. When I say that, let's say like the great banyan tree or the peepal tree, whose roots, branches, and aerial roots of the sacred tree, we can think of all these as our various Indic faiths that grew and flourished in India. So, in our nation or in Odisha, all these different Indic faiths represent the roots, the roots, branches, the aerial roots, all of this. So later on, because of this strong tree and all, later birds come and make a nest and all. So let's think of any other religions which came from foreign lands and made India their own or Odisha their own. Like that is like a whole sacred tree of life, which Bharatvarsha's civilization and cultural heritage depicts. So these different faiths might have been animism, totemism, Jainism, Buddhism, Saivism, Saktism. I like ism is like very like a Western way of saying about our faiths. So, but that's how it is. But otherwise, I would say Buddha, Jaina, Shaiva, Shakta, Vaishnava, Smarta, Shunya, all these different principles, like Indic principles, represent this great tree of life. So let's go to the first group, like subgroup, about the traditions that have called Odisha their home. And it is as ancient as time and humanity. It's about the tribal groups, the indigenous groups that have practiced animism, shamanism, totemism. That means nature worship, ancestral worship, worshipping logs and stones, and believing in like clairvoyants and medicine men or people who have developed occult activities who can guide them. So all such type of rituals and beliefs, animism, shamanism, totemism, they are as ancient as time and humanity. And this is not just confined to Odisha or Bharat, but it is a common denominator among any indigenous culture around the world you go to. Because I feel like as soon as humans understood about themselves, they started revering, they understood their presence in this earth. They also understood the divine qualities of nature, of life giving, preserving, a power giving, a nurturing power of all that is around them. So they started revering and worshipping these powers around them. And Odisha, being the third largest tribal population of India, where almost a quarter of Odisha's population being classified as scheduled tribes, and some of our tribal groups are some of the most ancient indigenous tribal groups of this world, such as the Bondas of Odisha. They go back for thousands and thousands and thousands of years of undiluted cultural preservation. So such presence in Odisha also is an indicator that animism, shamanism, totemism type of nature worship and all such practices have been there since time immemorial in Odisha. And I'll just quickly show you like a compilation of different pictures of altars, worship altars or totem poles and other things of various different tribes that are in use in Odisha. These are pictures I have collected from a visit to the Odisha State Tribal Museum, which is there in Odisha. It's a very good place to visit if you want to know more about the culture and traditions of different tribal groups who inhabit Odisha. And here is a picture, like a collection of pictures from Verrier Elvin's book. Elvin's book is one of the most enlightening book about tribal lifestyle and other things that he himself lived and understood. So certain pictures are here from there. And then about priests, shamans, and medicine men in all these different indigenous tribes in Odisha. And here are a set of pictures from about different priestesses, like female priests or female shamans. Like females being priests and shamans is an integral part of the indigenous tribal groups of India and Odisha. Like females have been given a very important role in their society to take care of the overall goodness, overall health, overall prosperity, overall protective powers for the society of that particular group and the village. So they have always been present throughout the existence of all these indigenous tribal groups, and even now you would find such practices among different tribals throughout Odisha. Now here I want to showcase about a very mystical and unique place in Koraput, Odisha. It's called Kutunipadara, and this particular place came to limelight only a few years ago when people found, like it had been there always, but it has come into more highlights since last few years. And this place is a very uniquely mystical place. Like you would find hundreds and thousands of Shivalinga sculptures there, and not only Shivalinga type of sculptures, but you find very prototypical sculptures of all different gods, goddesses there. Like it might be of Vishnu's, it might be of the mother goddess or the Durga, Shiva, Ganesha, Narayana, and so many different deities of the Hindu pantheon. So we really don't have like a very clear idea about what all happened in this area and why so many different, like hundreds and thousands of sculptures are there. It might have been a precursor site or a confluence site, or maybe a beautiful mishmash of all these different faiths which the tribals and the indigenous people around that area had practiced for years and years altogether. So this is something I wanted to highlight here about Kutunipadar. Then let's go to the second very important faith that shaped Odisha's psyche and its existence throughout the past millennia. It is the Jaina heritage. Very few people know that Odisha was home to a very strong Jaina presence throughout the last couple of millennia. Even till almost 10th, 11th centuries, Odisha's royals were patrons and Jaina, themselves also Jainas. So the highlights that I would like to share here go back to as far back as 2800 years ago, around 8th century before Common Era, which is about Bhagavan Parshvanatha and the Chakravartin Samrat Avakinnayo Karakandu of Kalinga. So in a book called Karakandu Charyu, the life and tales of Karakandu is given, where it is mentioned that this while Karakandu was the Chakravartin Samrat of Kalinga, Bhagavan Parshvanatha, the Jaina Tirthankara, he came and visited Kalinga and preached the faith there. Later on, even Bhagavan Mahavira, when he came, he also talks about Karakandu as the bull among the kings. So this all we find in Jaina texts. Then if we go on to the Maurya period and we talk about Megasthenes, who was the Greek ambassador in Chandragupta Maurya's court, everyone knows, almost everyone is familiar with his very popular treatise called Indica. So Megasthenes gives a great, beautiful picture about the then India, the then Maurya court and other kingdoms around in his Indica book. In that, he clearly mentions about Kalinga as a Jaina-dominated kingdom, as a Jaina stronghold. So we find that even during Chandragupta Maurya's time, Kalinga was a Jaina kingdom. Then if we go to Jagannath culture, many scholars believe that Jagannatha, the name may be like associated with Jinanatha, and some scholars believe that the Kalinga Jina worshipped by Kharavela, Samrat Kharavela, during the very illustrious emperor of Kalinga of the 1st, 2nd century before Common Era, is something which got syncretized into Jagannath later on. Always there have been traders, scholars, medicine practitioners who were from the Jaina faith and did trading with through the land route as well as the sea route. There were medicinal practitioners or Vaidyas who were very prominent in different parts of Odisha. And if you go to Khandagiri, Udayagiri, you also see a lot of that is a very important place where you find more about Jaina heritage in Odisha. And in the current times, you see the presence, the ruins still there. And in Subai area of Koraput, you also see some Jaina temples which are still in existence, like from the ancient times. And throughout Odisha, you will find sculptures of Jaina deities like gods and goddesses, which have which are there in the currently used like Hindu temples, and some sculptures are in other museums and all. And even in the open field, sometimes you will find this Chaturmukha or Chaumukha shrines or Jaina sculptures even lying in ruined state. So since it had been such a very ancient, age-old religion, this particular tradition, we right now don't see much, and we don't understand that Odisha was such a stronghold. We just remember about Kharavela, or because we see Khandagiri and Udayagiri, but we don't realize about the other parts of the Jaina heritage in Odisha. So I also forgot to mention that the Jambudipa Pannati in another Jaina text, it includes Kalinga as a list of regions suitable for wandering of Jaina monks. So Bhagavan Mahavira, when he came to Toshali, he preached his doctrine at the Kumari Parvat, which is modern Udayagiri hills. So this particular Khandagiri Udayagiri shrine, if you ever go to Bhubaneswar, you can see this beautiful rock cut cave temples, and such rock cut cave temples are not new to India. You would find them in many other parts of India where Jaina and Bodha cave temples are still present. And such rock cut temples from Udayagiri, Khandagiri have like the earliest sculptures were there from Samrat Kharavela's times, where there are sculptures showing Kharavela worshipping the Kalinga Jina and many other beautiful sculptures. Then we also see, and there is a very famous Hathigumpha inscription there, which talks about the times of Kharavela and how he lived, and all his laurels are there. Then in the same area of Khandagiri, Udayagiri, you also find sculptures from other time periods, like as recent, like as 11th century CE, like almost one millennium after Kharavela's reign. Like Kharavela was, let's say, 1st, 2nd century BCE. This is from 11th century CE during the Somvanshi Keshari king Udyot Keshari's times. So you see the different sculptures of Jaina gods and goddesses, deities etched into the walls. And Udyata Kesari's times, Somavanshi kings, although many of them were Shaivas later, but they also had a strong Jaina heritage in them. So here, that's what I was trying to compile, that Odisha's Jaina heritage, you see, spanning from 7th, 8th century before Common Era to almost 11th, 12th century, uh, as a continuous, like a practiced religion. Later on also it has been present, but it got more syncretized into other existing faiths, and not purely as Jaina, but still there are like certain practitioners of this faith all around Odisha, and we see these ruins and sculptures and temples in Bhubaneswar, in Koraput, and so many other places. So let's move on to the next faith. It's the Bodha heritage. Jaina and Bodha are two of the most ancient Indic religions of faith, not religions, but traditions and faiths of Bharatvarsha. And when people think about Bodha heritage, like most people in India and even Odisha sometimes think about the regions of modern day Bihar or even Madhya Pradesh, some places of Uttar Pradesh, mostly for this Bodha heritage, and Nepal and all that. But Tibet, Nepal, Ladakh, current Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, some parts of that, they think about the Bodha heritage mainly evolving and centering around that area. Although we find certain, also we find sculptures, stupas and other things in the southern parts also. And yes, of course, the Ajanta and Ellora caves and other chaityas, stupas everywhere, even certain like stupas or ruins found in Odisha. Many don't realize that the Bodha heritage was an integral part of Kalinga's existence. Like, it was huge. It was very, very important as a faith among the Kalinga people of many, like spanning for many centuries. And I personally feel that the amount of archaeological excavations or the studies done in the Bodha heritage is just the tip of the iceberg in Odisha. Like, we have hardly skimmed just like a little bit of fraction of what is out there even now, buried under mounds and the soil, or lying forgotten in manuscripts or sculptures in some places. We don't know, but whatever we have found, let me just showcase that, some of it to you, and show you how this heritage had been such a strong presence in Odisha's history. So there are a lot of highlights, like going into some of the highlights quickly, and because such some of these highlights I have tried to present in some of my earlier talks. If you have listened to them, or if you wanted to know more, you can find out from some of my other talks, or you can also go and try to learn more. There are so many resources out there. You can do it on your own. I'll just quickly glance through, walk you through some of the highlights. Going back to the times of the Buddha himself, the Buddha Gautama, Siddhartha Gautama, his first lay disciples, that is common people disciples, were the merchant brothers Trapassu and Bhalika, who were Utkaliya merchant brothers, like they were from Utkala, Kalinga, Odisha. They were the first disciples who the Buddha gifted his own kesha to them, which they further carried to different parts, and there were kesha stupas created because of this kesha asti. One of the kesha asti you find in Burma in the Shwedagon Pagoda. You find a kesha stupa also in Odisha, which was recently excavated in the last few years at Radhanagar. So that was a kesha stupa from Trapassu and Bhalika's times. We learn of Princess Hemamala from Singhali's Bodha texts. She was a princess of Kalinga who carried the Danta Asti, the tooth relic of the Buddha, to Singhala, which is even now worshipped at the Sri Dalada Maligava temple of the tooth at Kandy. So this particular princess of Kalinga taking the tooth relic to Singhala, tooth relic of the Buddha, I mean. We also learn of Princess Sanghamitra, the daughter of Ashoka the emperor, who went to Sinhala to preach the doctrines of Buddhism later on, after Kalinga was occupied by Ashoka. So she traveled from Kalinga's Tamralipti to Sinhala. Much later in time, during the between 8th and 10th century CE, we find about the Bhaumakaras, the royal dynasties, who were great patrons of the Buddha faith. Many of their kings, queens were great patrons, and they did a lot to build a lot of monuments, chaityas, viharas, stupas, etc. And even during that time, some of the kings had sent cultural ambassadors to ancient Tang China, who carried Buddhist manuscripts there and then stayed there and translated those manuscripts into the Chinese at that time. We also have heard about King Mahasiddha Indrabhuti and his sister, the Mahasiddha Lakshminkara, and Indrabhuti's son, Guru Padmasambhava, who were all like the tantric side of Buddhism, the Vajrayana, Sahajayan, all that being started because of these Mahasiddhas. We also have heard of Luipa, Kanhupa, Saraha, and the Charja Gitikas written by such Siddhas and Mahasiddhas. Then we have heard about and know about the Bodha faith from Odisha, how it traveled via the maritime trade route, via the Kalinga Sadhavas and the Kalinga merchant vessels, the Boitas and the Bahitras of Kalinga, to different parts of Southeast Asia. And with them, they even carried their culture, the tradition, and the religion and faith with them. Then in today's time, we see the ruins of the stupas, chaityas, and the viharas of those old times, some of which have been excavated, and you can see in the beautiful places called Ratnagiri, Lalitgiri, Udayagiri, which are around Jajpur. Then you see in Radhanagar, you see in Languri, you see in Parabari. You in so many places have a lot of Buddhist ruins around them. And as I was telling earlier, there is a lot more to be explored and excavated also. Even as I'm talking recently, the excavations have been reopened around the Lalitgiri, Udayagiri, Ratnagiri areas, the Buddhist Diamond Triangle area, to continue the excavations there. So hopefully we will get to know even more, more and more about the what is the actual history of this region throughout the different time periods. If you see at the sculptures, like sculptures of Buddha gods, goddesses, deities, and other divine beings from different schools of Buddhism, like Mahayana, Hinayana, and Vajrayana, you find throughout Odisha. Like throughout Odisha, I mean like the Kalinga of those ancient times, you find in different forms in different time periods. And even now, even as I was earlier explaining, even in temples which are dedicated to Shiva maybe, but they also have Buddha sculptures in them. So these last two sculptures are from like Kuruma, a place near Konarka, which used to be, it seems, maritime, something related to the maritime trading at those times. And then you find these Buddhist sculptures. So just like Jaina merchants were there, similarly Buddha faith practicing merchants and rich people and scholars who traveled through these maritime trade routes to different places and took their faith to different parts of Southeast Asia. So just this is a showcase of different sculptures. Then let's go to the Shaiva heritage of, I know it's very condensed, it's fast, but trust me, anything like any of these subtopics I was just telling you, each is so vast in itself, and if you are interested at all, you would love learning about these. So go and explore about this. I would suggest, I would request. I can help you if you want any any websites or any papers or how to go about it. You can email me. I'll give my email at the end of the talk. So let's go to the next one. It's the Shaiva heritage of Odisha. And this particular faith and tradition of Odisha is again one of the central pillars of our Kalinga's existence. Like if I say in any part of Odisha, if you go in present times, any village you go, any small village hamlet you go, two things you would find for sure. One would be a shrine or like a totem or anything dedicated to a Devi, a goddess, a village goddess, Grama Devati or something. Some goddess shrine you will find for sure. At the same time, you would find a Shiva temple in most of the villages across Odisha. That the place might not have a Vishnu temple or Krishna temple or even Jagannath temple might not be there, but where we think that Vaishnava culture is so central to our Odisha's existence. But they might not be there, but a Shiva temple and a Devi shrine, the goddess shrine, are very central to most of the villages across Odisha. So, and I'm talking about old temples, not just like newly constructed ones. And why is this? Because the Shaiva heritage has always been a part and parcel, a central, like a cornerstone of Kalinga's existence. So going back to very ancient times till like the changes and synthesis of different faiths inside Shaiva culture itself, whatever happened. So you can see different levels of the Shaiva faith, the Shaivism, like highlighted in Odisha's regions. So the highlights being the subsects like the Pashupata or the Lakulisha groups, the Tantra, Shaiva Tantra, the Bhairava, you see Ekapada Bhairava statues in a lot of such shrines, the depiction of Uma Maheshwara, then the different Shiva family god deities like Kartika, Ganesha, Ganas, and Shiva and Parvati, and Ardhanarishwara forms, Harihara forms. So different forms of Shivas you could find in different places. Then so many different ruling dynasties who actually helped keep Shaivism strong in Odisha, like because of their patronage, because of their the way they constructed like commissioned temples or patronized such scholars or mendicants, and the way of the life at that time, very people like were into like Shastra and Shastra both were equally done by the kings and the people, especially who were into all these things. So Shastra and Shastra, these are parts in our whole Bharatiya culture. It has always been important. So similar, the same thing you find in Odisha also. So here is a collection of sculptures from different parts of Odisha about like worshipping Shiva Linga or the Ekapada Bhairava. And this particular thing is a Nataraja Shiva, the Asanapata Nataraja, which is a very old, like one of the oldest depictions of Nataraja in whole of India. It is from the times of the Samrat Shatrubhanja, one of the Naga dynasties. And this is a Uma Maheshwara sculpture, not in Odisha right now, in one of the foreign museums. This is Lakulisha, depicted on one of the temple walls in Bhubaneswar, Ekamrakhetra. Harihara, Ardhanarishwara, Maheshwara. This is a very unique way of depicting Shiva Linga, is the Sahasra Linga. You find that in many temples across Odisha. This particular picture is from the Parasurameshwara temple. It's one of the oldest living temples of Ekamrakhetra, Bhubaneswar, dating back to the Sarodhava time of around 7th, 8th century. This is a Chaturmukha Shiva Linga. Again, few more sculptures like open air Shiva Linga. This one is a Kharakya Baidyanath in Old Town, Bhubaneswar, Ekamrakhetra. This is a panel on Parashurameshwara temple about, the wedding of Shiva and Parvati. And this is Nataraja, Uma Maheshwara. then Bhikshatanamurti of Shiva, and all such, various types of depictions of the Shaiva culture. Shaiva faith and religion was the most important state religion during the time of the Shailodbhavas of Kongoda Mandala. Shailodbhavas were great Shiva worshippers. Later on, Somavanshi Kesharis, they were also later on, they were, some of them are Jainas, but later on Shaiva faith was a very important faith for the Somavanshi Kesharis also. And during Ganga's times, also there were temples. Shaiva faith has been there from before the before Common Era till medieval times and till present in Odisha. But the strongest temple building sculptural prowess happened during the times of the Shailodbhavas and some of the Kesharis. Shailodbhavas are the same people who are believed to have an offshoot branch in the Shailendras of Java. During after the Shailodbhavas time, because of whatever reasons, political reasons or something, one of their branches, they ended up in Southeast Asia, in Java, and that Shaivism, what the Shailodbhavas practiced, can be seen reflected in Java. Even in ancient Javanese texts, it is mentioned that the Javanese knew the land of India as Keling or Kling, and anybody from Keling, India, were called as Kelings, and the Hindu tradition of the Java at that time was because of the Keling people who were ardent Shiva worshippers, and they brought that Shaivism to Java. So this is from a book by John Crawford. It's mentioned in that, the translation of the Javanese text. So here I want to show you something again very unique, which I had mentioned ago about the syncretism. In many of the Shiva temples across Odisha, this one is the example from the Padmeshwara temple in the Baneswara Hilak near Mahanadi. So this shows a very beautiful Shiva Buddha syncretism. You find the sculptures of different things from the Shaiva culture, even the goddess, and also at the same time you find some of the Bodha sculptures and shrines in the same temple complex. And similar Shiva Buddha syncretism or Shiva Buddha cult or religion can be found in Cambodia and ancient Java of those times. So another very strong marker that such things were culturally conducive and exchanged and maybe influenced each other. Now moving on to another faith, that is the worshipping the divine feminine or worshipping goddesses. These goddesses can be the more popularly known the Shakta goddesses, but they are also the indigenous goddesses, the different from the folk forms, from Vedic times, from Jaina, Naga, Buddha, and the Puranic Shakta goddesses. So the feminine deities worship is as old as time again, and has been in continuous use in the land of Kalinga and Odisha throughout all the different centuries, where the feminine force has been revered to the utmost, with the utmost respect and love. Again, there is a whole presentation about this from before that I had got into present. So if you are interested to know more in detail, please check that presentation out. So here I'm just again compiling a quick selection of pictures. These are a collection of pictures of various indigenous goddesses all across Odisha, and they might be from different indigenous faiths, from Jaina faith, from the these are Jaina goddesses, the Buddhist goddesses. Then this is a totem called Khambeshwari, the log worshipped goddess, and so many other famous important goddesses who are thought to be very pratyaksha, with lot of power and manifestations in different ways. Then also you go to different parts of Odisha, you would find the worship of the Saptamatrikas, the yoginis, Chausati yoginis that are around In India, there are only few yogini temples right now. Out of the two of the main yogini temples are in Odisha. One is in Hirapur and one is in Ranipur Jhariyal. So the Chausati Yogini, Saptamatrika, the goddesses like Barahi, Indrani, Maheshwari, Chamunda, and Gajalakshmi, a motive which is central to Jaina, Buddha, Hindu, all different faiths. So this is not just Gajalakshmi is not just Puranic Lakshmi. She is central to all these different faiths and a very unique depiction of Gajalakshmi, both elephants and Lakshmi together. Then you find manifestations of the mother goddess as Uma, Parvati, Devi, Narayani, and the Mahishasura Mardini of goddess Durga. Very, very important. Like you find a lot of sculptural reliefs of Mahishasura Mardini depicted with various number of arms, like some have 2 arms, 4 arms, 6 arms, 8 arms, 10 arms. So different Mahishasura Mardini sculptures. You find the worship of Dakshina Kali, even God Jagannath himself being equated with Dakshina Kalika. You find goddesses like Manasa for the serpent worship, like those goddesses. You find very ancestral and very primal goddess type of worship also, where I forget the name of this particular sculpture, but where the fertility is shown and that aspect is worshipped. Also, goddess worship in the temples, in the sculptures. Apart from that, lot of our festivals, vratas, and osha. Osha is like the vratas which are specifically done by the women folk. Many of these have like goddesses in their core. So not just living temples, not just texts or books about goddess worship, but practices, traditions about goddess worship, festival celebrations like the Raja festival, where fertility is celebrated, goddess earth is celebrated, the fertile woman, like the woman as the fertility symbols worshipped. So such things all together show the synthesis and syncretization of the goddess worship in Odisha. Now let's move on to the Vaishnava heritage, the worship of Vishnu and different forms of Vishnu. Now this is nothing new to India. India as a land is the land of Sri Rama, Sri Krishna, and various forms of Vishnu as we know. So Odisha is also home to such worship, and all such worship culminates into Jagannath, Sri Jagannath's culture. That we will also discuss in a little while, but let's talk about the Vaishnava heritage right now. Among all the different forms of Vishnu that have been worshipped, and we see the living proofs or the temples or different mentions in the texts and stuff, one of the very significant things you see is about the Nrsimha Upasana, the worship of God Narasimha or Nrsimha, which is the man-lion form of Vishnu's one of the 10 avatars, the Dashavatara. So Nrsimha Upasana, although it's not quite well known outside Odisha that Odisha was home to such a strong case of Upasana of the Nrsimha form, but the best example you see is in the so many temples are there, sculptures of Nrsimha are there in many of the walls and all, but particularly I personally feel like the Odia Bhagavata, which was written by Attibadi Jagannath Das, and it is one of the very important part of every Odia's life, the Bhagavata in Odia. This Odia Bhagavata, you would think that it would start with the praise of Vishnu or Narayana or Krishna. No, our Odia with the La Anadi Paramakara. So that itself shows the strong presence of Nrsimha's worship in Odisha. Then we also find a lot of different other forms of Vishnu being worshipped. Vishnu is worshipped as Sri Jagannatha, as you know, in the Sri Kshetra Puri, in the temple Sri Mandira, the Jagannath Mandira. Along with, there are so many other temples, like standalone individual temples in the Jagannath temple complex, but the main deity of worship are the Chaturdha Murti of Sri Jagannath, Balabhadra, Subhadra, and Chakraraj Sudarshana. There are other places in Odisha also which have important Jagannath temples. Like one more important temple is in Jaipur, Koraput. It is called Sabara Sri Kshetra. Then there is Patali Sri Kshetra. There is a very ancient temple in Dharakot, Ganjam. Then there is a beautiful temple in Gaudamadhupur. There are many such temples dedicated to Jagannath in different parts of Odisha. In Kendrapada of Odisha, there is a temple which worships Jagannath, Balabhadra, Subhadra, but that temple is dedicated to Jagannath's elder brother Baladev. So it's at the Sri Baladev Jiu temple. As I was mentioning about Nrsimha, there are a lot of Nrsimha temples, Nrsimha sculptures, which you find across Odisha, and many of them are in the Puri, in Sri Kshetra Puri itself. And apart from Puri also, there are a lot of some of the other places which have important Nrsimhanath or Nrsimha worshipping temples around Odisha. Then we find like very important form of Sri Rama being worshipped in Odisha. It is very unique to Odisha. Like Sri Rama is worshipped in India, that we all know, but in Odisha, the form that is worshipped is a form with like mustache and beard, like at least the Utkaliya style of mustache. In the Odaga Raghunath Jiu temple, then there is a place in Asureswar. There is a temple in Asureswar. There is a temple in Sorada. Like Raghunath Jiu is worshipped with mustache. So Raghunath is, Sri Ram is worshipped in the form as a Vanavasi. Like, because it is believed that Sri Rama, Lakshmana and Devi Sita, they also covered some parts of Odisha during their Vanavasa period. And because they were Vanavasis that time, they were not like kings and queens at that period, at that point of time. Their Vanavasi, in their Vanavasi attire, they are worshipped in these temples, which is again very unique, you would find in whole of India. Then Sri Krishna. There are temples dedicated to Sri Krishna again throughout Odisha. Like some of the important ones many Odiyas know are the Kantilo Nilamadhava, the Khirochora Gopinath in Remuna, the Sakhi Gopala temple, Niyali Madhava, and many across Odisha's like villages you would find like little Radha Kanta temples or Radha Madhava temples or like Radha Krishna temples. So Vaishnava as a cultural tradition was more popularized during the medieval times, during the after the Gajapatis, Prataparindra Deva's times, and lot of other saints, seers who came and preached in Odisha. Utkaliya Vaishnavism was strong. The Panchasakhas, made it more popular, and such things made the Krishna worship, Vishnu worship like a very common happening in throughout Odisha in those times. So there are also Vishnu temples which have like Narayana Murti, Varaha Murti, the Vamana or the Trivikrama Murti. Some of the important Trivikrama sculptures you find in Ananta Vasudeva temple, and one very beautiful Trivikrama sculpture I have seen is in the Art Institute of Chicago. Then you also find Sri Kalki sculptures on the wall. For example, one is in the temple at Gop. Gopo is a place, Gop. The temple name is Gangeshwari temple. You would find Sri Kalki's sculpture in the Odia Kalingan tradition there. Harihara, the syncretism between worshipping of Shiva and Vishnu. Like through the times, what happens when Shiva worship was very strong and popular, and then came the importance of Vishnu worship. So what happened was to bring a confluence of these two, to bring a cohesiveness of those two. The Harihara worship was popularized and patronized by a lot of kings at that time, and the Lingaraj temple is a beautiful example. Lingaraj temple at Kamrakhetra, Bhubaneswar, where Shiva is worshipped as Harihara. There are other places also, like for example Harishankar and other places across Odisha, where Shiva and Vishnu are worshipped together as Harihara. So these are some of the sculptures of Vishnu in different forms. And this first sculpture that you see, it's a very unique sculpture by itself. This is a flat-lying Vishnu sculpture carved into the riverbed. The stones on the riverbed are carved here as a Anantasai Vishnu. This is near Talcher, and it was done during the Bhaumakara time. So this is a open air, flatbed sculptural idol of Narayana, of Anantasai Vishnu, that you find in Odisha. This is the largest such open air flat-lying structure in the entire India. Then you find also the different sculptures I was telling you, different forms of Vishnu in his Dashavataras, like different forms. You find Krishna's depiction, Kalki's depiction. This is the Raghunath Ji I was telling about, Odoga Raghunath Ji. And all the different forms of Vishnu come and confluence in Jagannath. And not just the forms of Vishnu, but any faith that has called Odisha their home, be it the indigenous faith of tribal gods, goddesses, be it the Jaina faith, Bauddha, Shaiva, Shakta, Vaishnava, anything, and later on even Shunya, everyone gets confluenced into the central idea of Jagannath. Jagannath, the Lord of the universe. And this I have already spoken about, so I'll just flick through this slide here. Only again, Nrsimha Upasana I wanted to highlight is here the Shiva Vishnu, the Tantra, also like here the way it is, you would see similarities in other some other parts of India, and even you would find that, as I was mentioning about the presence in the Shiva Buddha culture in Java, the Tantra, the Shiva Tantra, the same Bhairava Tantra, you would see that similarity with this. This aspect of Odisha is by itself very, very unique, the Smarta heritage, where there is the worship of all the 5 different gods, deities. There is Narayana worship, there is Ganesha worship, there is Surya worship, Shiva and Shakti. I, as a child, and as I was growing up, I was always fascinated by how many different gods and goddesses we worship in our like Thakuraghara. Like every Odia house would have a Thakuraghara, just like every Indian house would have their, like an altar for the deity or a separate room for their different gods, goddesses. So the Thakuraghara in an Odia household would have all different type of gods, goddesses in the the collection. Like we worship Shiva, we worship Vishnu, we worship Kali, we worship Rama, Krishna, Hanuman, Ganesha, Saraswati, Lakshmi, Surya Upasana, like not as a picture but everyday morning ablutions to sun god. Like anything that you can think of in the presence of gods, goddesses, most Odia households will be worshipping all these gods and goddesses. And the different osas, bratas, festivals, like 12 masare 13 parva, in 12 months there are 13 festivals, they say, like so many festivals, osas, bratas worshipped in, like followed in Odisha. So in all such practices, daily practices and temple practices, we see the reflection of the worship of all these deities equally. So there is no such one deity which is bigger or stronger than anything. So there is the worship of all deities in this Smarta tradition in Odisha, and that I thought that we should highlight here. just to give an understanding that again this type of a confluence, this type of a syncretism, this type of a unique tradition exists in the Odia throughout Odisha throughout the centuries. Sun worship by itself, like just sun worship, has been again very ancient in Odisha. Like we find like couple of temples only now, mostly like dedicated to Surya. Everyone knows of the temple ruins at Konarka, the temple ruins of the dedicated to sun god. But there is also another very beautiful temple, the Biranchinaran temple in Buguda, Ganjam. It's of wood and a lot of beautiful murals you can see there. It's not just in temples, and there are standalone temples of Surya in Sri Kshetra's Sri Mandira complex. Also, in other temple complexes, you'd find temple dedicated to Surya. And apart from that, in our festivals, like let's say the Chandrabhaga Buddha near Konarka. Festival itself in Odisha, it's unique to Odisha. Sambadasam is not, I don't think you find it in any other part of India, where God Surya is worshipped by the mothers in the house, asking for the like welfare and the good health and prosperity of the children. So this is dedicated to sun god Sambadasami. So in worship, in festivals, rituals, we see the strong presence of Surya worship. I remember this is a more pan-Indian tradition of giving ablutions to the sun god after the bath. This is not just Odisha, but it's a pan-Indian thing. But I have seen the elders in our family, especially my dad or my grandfather or my father and all, like offering the water and saying Javakusumam Sankasham Kashyapayang Mahadviting, the sloka after their bath, the morning ablution. Ganesha worship also is a unique thing. Like it's like as many Ganapatya sect temples you would find in the south of India, that many you wouldn't find in Odisha. But still, there are some standalone temples for Mahavinayaka. Let's say in Chandikhol, there is a Mahavinayaka temple, which is again very unique, where all the different gods are worshipped as one deity in a single Garbhagriha. So this is a very beautiful temple, and Ganesha as a Parsha Devata, as a standalone, like Bhatta Ganesha temples in different temple complexes. Bhatta Ganesha means the Ganesha who is right there on the way. Like before you go to the main temple complex, you first pay your reverence and worship to the Bhatta Ganesha. So there is Bhatta Ganesha temples in Lingaraj temple complex, in Sri Mandira, like different bigger temple complexes, you'll find the Bhatta Ganesha. Also, Ganesha is a Parshva Devata on the niches of the temple walls. That is very central, like to all Kalingan temples. Then, like we discussed about all the main faiths that I had highlighted in the beginning. Apart from that, a lot of other things, traditions and practices and even subsects of many such faiths have shaped up the way of the people in Odisha, the way they think, the way they live their lives. So I'll just quickly highlight some of the things. The pictures that you see here, some of these show about the relic, the Gadi or the shrine of one of the Panchasakhas here, who considered the Sunya Brahma, the Nirguna, the Sunya Sahitas were composed like God as the Nirguna Brahma. That concept, like again, this is not a unique thing about just related to Odisha. This is a very central philosophy from ancient India. In the Vedas, Upanishads, you will find about the Vedantas. I mean, the Advaita Vedanta has been popular, has been known and Many treatises have been written by many seers throughout the centuries. So in Odisha, the Panchasakha, the way they brought it to the common masses in very relatable, common, simple Odia about the Sunya, about the the nirguna form of God, the supreme being. It got popularization throughout Odisha because of such simple poems, simple works, and which was sung by different wandering mendicants and seers. And in the Bhagavata, Odia Bhagavata also very strongly we find this central idea of Nirguna Brahma, apart from the Saguna Brahma of Krishna and Vishnu and other things. So this is one a part of it which became like a daily like a culture in Odia villages and places where people learned by listening to wandering mendicants and all. And even in the Bhagavata Tungis, or the small houses where Bhagavata was worshipped and read every evening, people could go after a days of work and just sit there and listen to the Odia Bhagavata and listen to the discourses, and then sing different songs later on. So very beautiful philosophies of life they learned from all this. Then there was the another important and strong sub culture which arose around 19th century in Odisha, which is the Mahima Dharma. Or so we would see Alek Babas who came asking for alms and singing about Mahima Gosai. And one of the most important persons in Mahima Dharma is Santhakavi Bhima Bhoi. Bhima Bhoi is a name. He's a very memorable person from Odisha, whose words, like simple words like Praninka Arata Duk. I'm somehow like messing up my first two lines, but the last two lines are important. Praninka Arata Dukha Apramita Dekhu Kiba Sohu Mo Jibana. The main two important lines are Mo Jibana Pache Narke Padithau Jagata Uddhara Ho Heu. That means the gist of these lines are like so much of suffering and wars in this world of these sentient beings. There is so much of suffering, not just humans but animals, birds, like there is so much of suffering all around in this world. Oh Supreme God, I don't care if my life goes to hell, like narco is hell, so mo jibana pache narke padithao. If my life has to be in that narka or the hell, let it be so. But Jagata Uddhara Heu, like this whole Jagata is like a whole world. Let this world get saved, or let this world survive and get saved. If it needs my life is in hell because of that in narka, let it be so. This reminds me of the story of Dadhiji, the great seer Dadhiji, who gave up his life so that from his asti the vajra could be made, and the demon could be tackled with his. So he gave up his life like that. This very poor, very from a village, the saint Santhakabi Bhima Bhoi, who doesn't have like great knowledge about Vedas, Upanishads or texts, but he has this very central philosophical belief from his the Mahima, the Sunya Brahma and the Mahima Dharma. What he understood is these few lines, which even went to the UN, the United Nations, at one point and was discussed there. So this is one thing, and we would see Alek Babas come and ask for alms. We would see Chakkuliya Pandas who came and like sang very beautiful religious texts and spiritual lines and asked for alms. We would see Natha yogis, the Natha Sampradaya, right? Gorakhnath, much all that. Natha Sampradaya yogis, they used to come and sing the Tika Govinda Chandra. That is again one more thing where if you heard a Natha yogi with his kendera instrument singing the lines of Tika Govinda Chandra, I assure you there was not even one single person whose eyes were not tearing up at that time. And everybody would cry listening to that, because it talked about the reality of life. Like, what is there in this material life? This is nothing. Like, everyone has come to this world, just how they will just go without any other material positions, without any attachments. Like, what is this family? What is this material world? Everybody has to go. And the story in Tika Govinda Chandra, the way it was, it made people, kept them grounded, and many Vaishnava saints, poets who were from the Panchasakha tradition and all, the way they wrote Chautisas. Chautisa is a very type of traditional poetry from Odisha, where each consonant of the Odia alphabet, like ka, kha, ga, gha, the line begins with one consonant. Like ka, there'll be one line, then kha, like that. The Chautisas were composed, and one of the Chautisas was Monobodha Chautisa, which was composed in this post medieval times, was about, again, it's called how this life is so transient, and everything is an illusion, and like we get attached to stuff, we get attached to family, we get attached to things. We are greedy in our lives that, oh, I want to achieve that and this. But at the end of the day, what happens when we leave this world? So such things where you could hear in the common streets when people, such wandering seers came to sing, or such things were later incorporated into the Chattasali, means the early education schools in Odisha in the post-medieval times and early modern times. Even in Chattasali, such poetry was taught to little children and older children. When, as growing up stage, you learn about such beautiful philosophies of life, about helping others, about having kindness, about empathy, about the service, about dedication, about the feeling towards a society, about believing God and spiritualism. So such things shaped up a whole generations of people, like keeping them simple in their lifestyle, and well grounded. So I always remember one few lines I had heard and I had read from Sri Ma, Sri Aurobindo and Sri Ma. Sri Ma's writings, that is something where she talks about how Odia people were to her, like how she perceived the Odia people. Even in the 1960s, when she talks about people from Odisha, she talks about the simplicity. She talks about their ever givingness, like they're always ready to do, ready to give, ready to like they don't care about name, fame and all that, how they are simple people. These are all the words of Sri Ma in the 1960s, I'm saying. And how did such a picture arise? That means there were the people, the society of Odisha was like that, which has been shaped up throughout these centuries because of all this type of central philosophies which has taken place in Odisha. Be it the fighting spirit from the Shaiva prominent days or the Tantra prominent days, where the rulers and the normal pikers like gave up their lives for the land and the people without even thinking about anything, because the way they worshipped their Ishtadeva or Ishtadevi at that time. Later on, when Vaishnavism came, or even during Jaina Bodha times, how the people were, the different type of dogmas and philosophies which grew up, and having the food habits in Odisha, the different things are reflected in that. During Vaishnava times, as I'm telling all about such things written by the Odia poets in common Odia, which people could understand. There were Sanskrit scholars also in Odisha who wrote in pure Sanskrit. At the same time, there were people like the poets in Odisha who wrote in colloquial Odia, very simple and local Odia, that it reached every part of people at those times. Then with the times when Utkaliya Vaishnavism and later on Gaudiya Vaishnavism came, that is Sankirtana also you see. I forgot to mention about the Janu Ghantiya. There are another type of wandering seers who came. Then the Matha Sanskriti also was very strong around Puri, the Sri Kshetra Puri. Different mathas also are there, which serve the different aspects of Jagannath temple on their own, and did a lot of social work in terms of education, in terms of upliftment of the society at that time, help during the times of need, of droughts, of floods and all. There were Jaga Akhadas which trained people in, like, they were like trained in martial arts and other things, and worshipped Hanuman, and they took care of the protection of the Puri or the temple area and the people. Such traditions also existed. So in all this we see how Odisha has exemplified unity in all these different types of diversities, and everything comes and confluences in Sri Jagannatha. Sri Jagannatha we consider as the whole soul, everything of Odisha. Jagannatha exists in every Odia's life, day-to-day life, and throughout the centuries, throughout the millennia, as everybody has come and made Odisha there and made Odisha into their home, any faith they have practiced, anything that they have brought with them has come and confluenced in the Jagannath culture. The food, the offerings that we give to Jagannath, the different types of rituals that is followed, the different festivals that we follow for Jagannath, all this we see, like, there are so many, the Veshas, the songs that were written, the different traditions in the Puri temple, the servitors. I want to again highlight something very unique. In the Jagannath temple, some of the servitors are from their lineage goes back to the Savara lineage. The Savaras were the indigenous people who actually worshipped before Jagannath was in Puri. The Sabara Biswavasu, he was worshipping Jagannath, and then the king sent Vidyapati, and that is a big story about how Jagannath came into being in Puri. So not going into that, though, those Savaras who used to worship, their descendants also are the Daitapatis right now, who are the Daitapati servitors. So you see that is worshipping by the Brahmins, that is non-Brahmins, that is other non-Brahmin and non-Daitapatis who in their own accord serve the temple. Like somebody does the like people who provide the pots and the things to the temple, people who provide the garlands or the flowers or anything for the temple to like to go on in its day-to-day thing, a temple, how it operates. Every part of the temple's thing, even to the dress of whatever the dresses and attires the gods are wearing, they are the weaving communities who serve that. So all these different services are from different parts of the society. So these all, like, that is what is about our central culture of Odisha, where Jagannatha is the center, and Jagannatha epitomizes all such beautiful confluences happening throughout the times. Before almost ending the talk, I'll just say how royal and social patronage has shaped up all this. Although I have mentioned it in some of the slides I already mentioned, but the heydays of the Kalingan temple architecture was during the Chedis, that is Samrat Kharavala time. You find the rock cut temples of the cave temples of Udayagiri, Khandagiri. During the Bhaumakara's times, you see the beautiful Ratnagiri, Lalitgiri, Udayagiri Buddhist complex, or be it the Boitala temple, or there are like lots and lots of temples and monuments which were patronized by the Bhaumakara rulers. The Sarodbhavas, they were the most important Shiva worshipping families who ruled at the Kanguda Mandala of Kalinga. The Nagavanshis, among them Shatrubhanja was the most important. You find relics from the Nagavanshi time. In Sitabinj, you find murals, you find Dasan Patna, Nataraja, and so many more. And Nagavanshi is not just in present day Odisha. This Nagavanshi is of Kalinga. Like many of them, in today's time, you would see that in Chhattisgarh actually. A lot of that like Kalinga heritage, you would find that in present day Chhattisgarh. So if you go to Chhattisgarh, if you see the type of temple architecture there, it's very, like many of these are very similar to Kalingan temple architecture. And why is that so? Because the Dakina Koshala, the current western parts of Odisha, which was the Dakina Kosala region and nearby regions, there were so many different ruling dynasties which patronized all these different faiths that they patronized, and the temple building that happened were like similar to each other, because that was all like part of their reign, their presence. Then came the Somavanshi Kesharis, the Prachya Gangas, the Eastern Gangas, Gajapatis, and many other smaller miscellaneous dynasties and ruling houses. There were certain regions and clusters which have been important for monument building. So let's say Ekamra Khetra, the Bhubaneswar old town. Ekamra Khetra is a time, at one time, before all these modern houses and things were there, it was a place which was full of temples. There were more than 1,000 temples, I think, at one time in Ekamra Khetra. Like in present day, when we think of, like, let's say in worldwide, we think of Bagan in Burma. You see those big hot air balloons over little pagodas in Bagan, Burma. In my head, I sometimes think Ekamra Khetra would be like that, a place full of big and small temples dedicated to Shiva, Shakti, and different temple structures, and lot of tanks like Pokhari. Old Town is full of temples and pokharis, and in this pokharis there will be one Dipadande in the center. There will be one little temple. Not just Ekamra Khetra, pokhari or tanks are central to many of such ancient temples and temple complexes throughout Odisha. So one is Ekamra Khetra. Jajpur or the Biroja Khetra also saw a lot of patronization in temple building, because some of the ruling dynasties had made it their capital at one point. Prachi Valley. Prachi was a river, was very important in the past. Right now, Prachi is not that mighty a river anymore because of various reasons. But at one time, the Prachi River was one of the gateways, like for the maritime traders and all to do. And on its bank, there are so many beautiful temples and complexes, which even now you can see the presence of the ruins and some temples there. The Mahanadi Valley, Mahanadi, the largest river in Odisha, which now is Chhattisgarh and Odisha both. So you see the upper Mahanadi Valley, lower, both are like there is presence of lots and lots of temples. And actually some of the most ancient temples right now are under the water of the Mahanadi. After Hirakud Dam was established or like built in post-independent India, after the Hirakud Dam's building, the way the Mahanadi changed and it flooded a lot of these regions, many of such ancient temples are underwater and they are actually intact. Like some of the research groups which have gone and done work about these temples, they say that even staying for so many years underwater, they still are that beautiful. So when the water dries up, sometimes you can see the top of the temple or some parts of the temple which outside the water. then of course Purushottama Khetra or Shri Khetra or Puri. So these are the different regions and places of Odisha where you find most of the beautiful monuments. And why do you think Odisha has always has served such a nurturing ground? Like if you go to northern parts of India, you would find hardly any more ancient temples left because of foreign invasions and destruction of temples. You wouldn't find. But then why Odisha has so many temples? And also in Odisha, the temple architecture, the Kalingan style is very unique, and it was never diluted because of any Greek influences or any Islamic influences or any other foreign influences. It somehow kept its own uniqueness throughout the times, and many scholars have noted upon that. The main thing, what I believe, is the unique situation of Odisha, because the geography, the way it was. On the entire eastern coast, it guarded by the bay, the greatest bay, the biggest bay of the Indian Ocean, currently known as Bay of Bengal. In its western areas and north and other parts of the land areas, it was always full of like dense forests which had a lot of wild beasts in it, and the terrain of Odisha was like hilly and a lot of rivers and channels and swamps, and the way it was, that's hills, forests, mountains, rivers, and difficult terrains, and even inhabited by very fierce tribes, made it a very like isolated place for a long time. People from outside Odisha didn't come and conquer Odisha for a long time. So whatever the culture was Odisha, it uniquely developed here. Like nothing, no other influence happened. And sometimes because of strife between the north, like when foreign conquerors attacked somebody in the north and all, when they fled, sometimes some of them came, and here they could flourish without any fear or worry about being attacked or being killed. So a lot of such things happened over the times, and this I'll very quickly just glance upon, because I've already spoken about it. The maritime trade legacies, the Kalinga's maritime trade legacies, it is reflected not just in Kalinga itself, in Kalinga along with like Kalinga's similarities with present day Karnataka, Kalinga's similarity with present day Andhra, and outside Odisha. You will see a lot of sculptures, temples, and everything which have like similarities of Kalinga tradition with all these other places, be it Cambodia, be it Burma, be it Java, Bali, Sri Lanka. You see a lot of similarities in such architecture, sculptures, and temples, even traditions and festivals. So to conclude, I would say change is the only constant. Cultures are porous, they are open to intermixture with others, different cultures. They are subject to historical change precisely on account of these influences. So this I have like taken as a reference from a paper that I had read. Culture will always be open to such beautiful, like evolution, syncretism, but the place where it is accepted, not just tolerated, where it is given a safe refuge, where it is given the liberty to express itself on its own accord, those places will have the most beautiful examples of such unity in diversity, the beautiful syncretism, the beautiful vibrancy of all these cultures and these dogmas and these philosophies you find in the central life of its people itself. So with that, I will conclude my talk. And as I said, everything has so much more to it. So anybody wants to know anything more, if you're watching it in the upload in the YouTube later, so my email is given here. It's globalodia with 2 A's at gmail.com. Please feel free to write to me if you wanted any more resources to understand anything. And with that, I conclude. Thank you for your patience in listening to me today. Thank you. Jai Jagannath, Bande Utkala Janani.
Thank you very much, ma'am. That was a very elaborate and enriching talk, and truly a journey through the divinity of Odisha and why it has been a ground which has been so nurturing to the different cultures and the religiosity and the spiritualism that makes grounds for a cultural fabric of any region. We wish to have many such talks with you. Thank you very much. Namaste.